Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Greater Somerville. I'm KyAnn Anderson. Tonight's topic, development in Union Square. In preparation for the arrival of the new Green Line station in 2017, the Somerville Redevelopment Authority is in search of a master developer to oversee the revitalization of 7 large land parcels located in the heart of Union Square. With many local residents and business owners concerned about how this long-term development will impact the culture and vibrancy of the gritty square we all know and love, the importance of this selection process becomes quite clear. Tonight, we will talk with National Development and Federal Realty Investment Trust, one of the 4 remaining teams vying for this master developer role, to find out their long-term visions for Union Square, should they be selected in May. So please join me in welcoming Ed Marsteiner and Don Briggs to the show. Welcome to Greater Somerville.
Thank you, KyAnn.
Thank you for being here. I know you both are very busy. So we have a lot going on, a lot to go over in tonight's program. So why don't we just get right to it? And maybe you can tell me a little bit about your team, how you're involved with the team, and how you ended up in Somerville.
First and foremost, thank you for having us. We're thrilled to be here and be part of this process and to have an opportunity to share some more thinking about Union Square and some of our thoughts going forward. So thank you for that. We're thrilled to be here. I thought Don and I talked and thought it'd be interesting in describing our teams to share a little bit about our own selection process of each other, which was our first selection process here day one. When the RFQ came out, we got together shortly thereafter and had a very blunt, open discussion about whether we were going to chase the project on our own. We both have a fairly large presence here in the Boston area and felt that we could do it on our own, but pretty quickly came to the conclusion that to put the best team on the field to serve Somerville in the Union Square project, that would be a great idea for us to team up and work together. Mm-hmm. So that's what we've done. For me personally, in looking at Federal Realty, I've always been impressed. I feel like Federal is certainly one of the preeminent mixed-use development companies in the country. My first introduction to Federal goes way back to, I went to business school on the West Coast, and I used to go to Santana Row, one of Don's projects down in San Jose, and I had great experiences there and was very impressed with the project. So for me, I have a great respect for that national presence in perspective on things, which I think is really important in dealing with a complex project like this in Union Square, yeah. to have that be part of it. And when you layer in on top of that their local presence with the work they've been doing at Assembly Row, it's a fantastic combination of experience, from my perspective. And I think there's never more evident than the fact of dealing with the MBTA. As part of the Assembly Row project, there's a new train station, the first one in over 20 years, mm-hmm. going into this area. And the same design team that works on that is working on the Union Square station. So that's a critical piece of getting into this project.
Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. Thanks, Don. Of getting into this project right away. And I think that having that smooth transition with Federal being involved on both of those projects would be a very good thing. I think kind of the other thing for me is the capital structure of Federal Realty. I believe they're the only company that's involved in this that is a public company, and that's long-term patient capital, which if you ask me of all the other things that we're talking about and considering, that may be the single most important thing to consider here. This will be a long-term project. We'll go through real estate cycles here. Unfortunately, there will be another downturn, and having that capital with an $8 billion market capitalization with Federal is really important.
So thanks, Ed.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Next slide. I've known Ed and the folks at National now for a number of years. We've actually worked together at Assembly. Cranshaw, an arm of National, is actually building our portion of Assembly Row. So, I was very attracted to working with a developer of National Development's caliber. They've been in this market for almost 30 years. And what they've developed over that course of time, almost 21 some odd million square feet of development here, is really just an extraordinary track record. They've done a diversity of work, everything from neighborhood development to R&D to repositioning of assets in the Fort Point Channel. And so when you look at that diversity and that skill set and their presence here, They bring a depth of relationships on the institutional side, with folks like MIT and Tufts and other institutions here. They have great relationships with venture capitalists, and they know the brokerage community. They know, frankly, they know tenants, and they know this market. And so you marry that skill set with ours, kind of a national presence, really understanding how mixed-use neighborhoods get put together, their more entrepreneurial skill set, and frankly, a flexibility and diversity of how to get deals done. This is going to be, Union Square is going to evolve. It's going to evolve over a number of years, and being creative in terms of how we approach different opportunities, both together and together with the city and the community. I think that creativity that national development brings and that market knowledge that national development brings is going to be essential for success here in Union Square.
So now going over what I think one of the biggest things is, as you'd said, that the development of Union Square is going to be, over time. And so this is why this is such a critical decision, is that, you guys or one of the remaining candidates will be really around for a while, which you're very used to with Assembly Row. What do you see the vision in, Union Square? I mean, what is your team that sets you apart from the other remaining teams?
Yeah, could we have the next slide?
Next slide.
I think that first and foremost, we're not arriving here with an answer. I think that the vision has grown out of a lot of the work that the city of Somerville, the community has done through Summer Vision, through the Union Square Urban Plan. And I think that before anybody walks in the door, there needs to be a pretty healthy dialogue with the stakeholders that have been here for a long time. In fact, we've already commenced that dialogue, certainly with the city, certainly with various folks within Union Square and other stakeholders, just to understand what their vision is. I think it's important that when we talk about a vision, that's kind of the key component. And I think if you look at the team that we put forward, I think a lot of the teams put forward, a laundry list, 15 or 20 different consultants, and I think they pretty much went out and grabbed anybody and everybody. We actually think that the most important partner are the two folks sitting here, the development partner. We're the ones that are going to be the continuous, the continuity throughout. And so we purposely selected some of our strategic creative partners with Streetworks, with VHB, with Forcier. And we have the opportunity, I think, to work with really the best in class when you move from that, whether that's Arup or Methuen on the sustainability side, or any host of architects that we've worked with over our careers, Alcus Manfredi, amongst one that's building out at Assembly Row. So there's a whole host of design team that will flesh out as part of this, and we'll fill that out. And so I think that's kind of important, our approach. When we think about the vision, if you can go forward to the next slide. So next slide. So we really look at a series of design principles and how do you create a great community. One of the first design principles is gateway, sense of arrival. And that's done whether through architecture or through placemaking or through space making. There is already some great gateways into Union Square today, and I think we just want to enhance those. Next slide. And then I think there needs to be a real focus on the public realm. What does a space look like? We want to create places for families, a real street environment. So it exists today in Union Square, and we want to enhance that. And the next slide, please. And then it's really about the scale and the blending of all those things. There's a great backdrop that's in Union Square today. And if you look at the parcels that have opportunity for redevelopment that are part of the RFP, those are places where we can come in and plug into a great environment, enhance that, bring a different mix of uses to create really a 24/7 environment. And we've had a long history of bringing in community uses. We've built a couple libraries, a couple performing arts centers. And I think really those elements, when you bring them together with great office, great residential, great retail, and frankly a great public place, that becomes a place for the community, for everybody. And I think that's really the meat of our vision within Union Square itself.
Sure. Next slide, please. One of the things that we've spent a fair amount of time talking about in other forums to date, since the very beginning, is how to best use what everybody understands is really the driver behind this change in the train station to really optimize the project long term here in Union Square. In what we've been saying is one thing that's really important is getting the station itself done correctly, which is really the first thing we need to hit right out of the gates here in this project. And what we mean by that is how that station communicates with everything, not just Union Square and looking down Prospect Street, down towards this building in Union Square, but how it communicates with the whole area surrounding Union Square. And in particular, Boynton Yards, which we've talked a fair amount about in our presentations, because we really believe it's a phenomenal economic development engine for the city of Somerville for decades to come, with some really untapped potential over there. And one of our concerns is that the station, as it's currently designed, is really geared towards Union Square, and it's been all thought about going towards Union Square. And having things such as a bridge, a pedestrian bridge, which will span, it's not a long distance, 50 to 60 feet across the tracks, and really connect directly to Boynton Yards to serve as a new gateway, as Don talks about, or a new direct entry to Boynton Yards is really important to not turn its back on Boynton Yards. The other thing that we've talked a lot about is changing the front door, the arrival of Union Square, and pulling that back to the intersection with Webster Ave and Prospect Street. And the reason that becomes really important is it creates a new front door for Boynton Yards and a new sense of arrival there. But it also allows you to create a streetscape and a pedestrian-friendly environment all the way from that intersection down into Union Square. And that's really important because if you're going to encourage people to walk that distance back and forth between Boynton Yards and Union Square and really develop the whole area, it's got to feel comfortable. It's got to be pedestrian friendly. So we think that's a really critical component of this project to say the train station's a new epicenter here, not downtown Union Square or Union Square proper as everybody thinks about it, and how do we best take advantage of that? So those are two things we're spending a lot of time thinking about.
The only thing I would add is that when we build neighborhoods, and what we found is it's not really about the architecture. It's really about the place between the buildings and the space between the buildings and how that gets used, and frankly, the people that populate it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we spend a lot of time thinking about what are the ingredients that we're going to put into that mix. How do we create that stage, and then how do we let that neighborhood grow organically and those events happen. And I think that's really the trick to creating a neighborhood and not a project.
Out of curiosity, just because I did tell you I was an architect,
Yep.
In regards to your comment, it is about the spaces, but in terms of the architecture, there are developments out there that tend to be, shall we say, a little vanilla in terms of the aesthetic. So I'm curious as to why. I'm just, look at me, I'm jumping right into the question section. Sorry about that. They were nervous about it. No,
it's quite all right.
And it's really about how, making those spaces in between the buildings, but making sure that we're not going to be having a vanilla box that's going to rid Union Square of the gritty nature that it currently has, which we all love. So what is your response to that? Because the size of this is huge.
Well, I think there's two things. I think there's a great there today, right? There's some great context that's there. There's some great history that's there. How do we strategically focus on making sure that some of that, all of that, a portion of that stays there so that Union Square stays to some degree where it is today. I think the second piece of that is, if you look at our team, one of the key team members we chose was Forcier. Paula Reese, who's one of the premier placemakers in the country. We've worked with her in a variety of places. We use her and we use Streetworks to come in and help us infuse embedded art and embedded placemaking that becomes part of the architecture, so that vanilla doesn't become vanilla, it's vanilla with a little bit of frosting.
Neapolitan.
And you do that through creating fabric buildings that have character, and not necessarily prima donna landmark buildings. What's great about Union Square is there's a fabric to it, and we need to make sure we knit ourselves into that fabric. And I think we have the right consultants and skill set and history. If you look at some of the projects we've done, they give you that sense of place, and it's a hidden thing.
One of the things that we hear a lot about and certainly exists, it's plentiful here in Union Square, is diversity. And we always say in the projects we do, the art is to have it feel like it's been built over different, periods of time, even when these projects are built at the same time, and look like it's organically been built over time and show different character and not be vanilla from top to bottom. It's a real art form, and one of the things we like about the diversity of having two teams here is different perspectives, two different perspectives here, and then many different perspectives throughout our team. And going back to what Don said about selecting our team and not having finalized all those pieces, is it may be multiple multiple architects who are involved who
Yeah.
are looking at different buildings and giving different perspectives. So we're here to embrace that diversity of what exists here today and to embrace it and have it be part of the fabric of Union Square going forward.
That's in fact what we've done at Assembly.
Can we get the next slide?
Next slide.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry, no, that's okay. So we're going to get into a few questions.
Great.
I compiled these from a list of going to the Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as the public at large. I've sent this out, so these are compiled questions. So we'll just start a few of these off here. And they have not gotten the questions ahead of time. I'm supposed to be sure I say that. So many would question the SRA's decision to, how do we say it, put all their eggs in one basket. Obviously, given your involvement with the Assembly Row project, that's a considerable development size. What would you say in terms of, what's your response to those people with that concern?
Well, I would say you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Part of the strength of this team is this is a different basket. Bringing national development on, I think, brings a whole new perspective and another dimension to this team. So it is not simply the folks at Assembly Row doing this. That being said, Federal Realty has made a huge commitment, and the city's made a huge commitment to Federal Realty at Assembly Square. We have $2 billion of development and investment out there. I would point to the history that we've had, and I like to think that everybody's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. So in one view, you could look at, do we really want to put everything together with this group? To the other side of the coin is, this group has really performed. They really know the city. They've worked with the city and the community. We have a track record of history together, solving problems. And I think when you really think about it, I think a lot of people think that because of that history, that we might be a favorite in this, but I actually think our challenge is much harder. I think that when the city and this community evaluates Federal Realty, they're evaluating us on a real, deep, substantive level. They're looking at, what have we done? How has it gone at Assembly? What problems have been solved? What is being built? What challenges were overcome and how have they behaved? And at the end of the day, we've had to take positions. We've had to do things, and we've had to either follow through or not follow through on promises. And so I think when the city and this community evaluates us, they're evaluating us on our substance, not on a slideshow. And I think that that's important. And I think that if we didn't measure up to that, then we shouldn't be sitting here in this room today.
Okay. In their remarks, the CAC praised you for your thorough understanding of complex permitting and zoning issues. So why do you think this is so critical for the project in Union Square?
You want me to address that?
Sure, I'll add on.
I think that I think there's been a lot of forethought put into how Union Square is going to be built. I think there's been some dimensional decisions made about density, about where that is. And I think if you kind of step back, not just simply Union Square, you look at the opportunity that presents itself anywhere where a new T-stop is being built or any other place where there's transit-oriented development. I think we, as a country, need to maximize those opportunities and make sure that we do that in a way that limits greenhouse gas production across the board. I mean, it's proven that dense transit-oriented development around transit really, in and of itself, dramatically reduces greenhouse gas. And I think that there should be some forethought put into how do we make sure we're putting the right density within walking distance to the T. There are decisions that have already been made about height, et cetera. And I think one of the things that we posited is, do we want to make a value decision of pushing some density closer to the T and creating a mechanism that preserves character and scale of what currently exists in Union Square back against the neighborhoods. And I think there are ways to do that. So it's not simply, let's just pump more density into Union Square. Let's figure out what's the right way and right places to put it, and how can we create tools and mechanisms that incentivize and or allow for kind of the preservation of what we want to keep. And I think there's ways to do that.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned as your team's strength in the CAC meetings was that you had worked together for years and you're very comfortable with one another, which we just mentioned. How does your team prevent stagnation in your innovative approach to development and building design within these established working relationships?
well. Why don't you take a first crack at that, and I'll follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about, it's a little bit about what we already discussed, is that it's, A, we respect each other. We respect the work that, that we've independently done over the years. And we respect the diversity of thinking, and we embrace it. So I think we actually welcome each other to say, let's have constructive feedback with each other. Let's sit down and challenge each other in our ideas, because it's often easy in what we do to not see the forest through the trees. And so I think just from having two different complete perspectives on things at times, it's a very healthy thing.
I mean, the only thing I would add is part of what, and I go back to what I said that attracted us to national development. Mm-hmm. You can look at the portfolio of what they've done, not simply over the last 30 years, but over the last 5. Yeah. And there is a huge diversity of what they've done. And that in and of itself implies a sense of entrepreneurism, creativity, evolution in thinking. And I think we welcome that to our team, and we think that's going to be a great collaborative partnership.
I just think real quick on that, there's some things that we've done that are the same. We've done a lot of transit-oriented development and a lot of mixed-use development, but there's certain things that we've done on the senior housing side, and a lot of work with innovation-type companies, startup companies, and there's things that Federal has done that are complementary to what we've done as well. So we truly think that our skill sets complement each other.
Okay. This is a community question. As the master developer, your level of influence on the parcels that are currently owned by other developers and people that own it, excuse me as I get to my second page, this is probably, I'm not supposed to have notes here, but that's okay. As the master developer, what is the likelihood that you would buy the land and rent it, or would you allow for business owners to say buy it back, or what are the opportunities there? I understand that there's, obviously Ricky's market comes to mind, and what type of opportunities are there for the business owners that are currently here established?
Are you meaning on the parcels that the city is currently have as part of the
Correct.
proposal?
So, for example, like Ricky's market, right. I understand, is going to be taken from eminent domain. Right. But are there other businesses that are here to stay, mm-hmm. If they don't currently own their parcel? Like, what are the opportunities? Like, what assurances can they have, or what innovative ways could the parcels be divided up? And I don't understand entirely the opportunities there. So.
I guess I'll answer it, and we've have met with Ricky a couple times, and he's a landmark, right, in Union Square, and frankly it's a great creative use. You've got a flower shop and it greens up the square, and so you've got a proven operator that has a great unique use. I don't know how you don't find a home for Ricky's, and we got to figure that out, and it's got to work its way into our planning. And then I think if you look at the amount of development that we're bringing compared to the full size of Union Square, it's a fraction of the entirety of Union Square. And I think what's going to happen is as Union Square evolves, so will the ground plane, so will the retail, and so. My sense is there's a number of operators that are going to thrive in this environment. When we bring in a daytime population, and now the independent can open for lunch, I think that their business is going to thrive. Yeah. You look at Block 11 and the amount of traffic and Union Square Donuts, and you look at those locations, and I think those locations, amongst a whole myriad of others, are going to thrive based on the new traffic, and I think that's hopefully what we're creating.
So what do you see as the biggest risk over the next decade of development in Union Square? In terms of, there are obviously, there's so many things to think about, a lot of moving parts, and what do you think is potentially the bigger risk?
You want to take the first crack at that?
Yeah, I think the greatest risk, or the greatest challenge, quite honestly, is dealing with competing priorities. And I think you need to step back in a process like this and understand what the priorities are for all the different factions and groups who are involved here. There's a lot of different people who have a lot of different input on this square, which is what makes it great. But you've got to then step back and say, where are we going to focus? Where are we going to focus our efforts? What are the things that we're going to prioritize and make sure work here, from affordability to preserving existing tenants and folks who have been here for years, some of the things you mentioned, to making sure diversity exists here. There's in any project, there's limited time and resources. There may be a lot of both of those, but there's limited time and resources in a project. And you got to decide collectively as a group how to best use those resources. And that's a great challenge.
I agree with that 100%. The one thing I would add to that is a different challenge, which is this is an opportunity that's going to last over a long period of time. And over a long period of time, real estate cycles move up and down, as they did through our ownership at Assembly Square. And I think that the greatest risk on the city's part and the community's part is that they wind up with a master developer that doesn't have the fortitude to get through the trough. And that's going to be really important because this is a long view. There isn't an in and out view. This isn't a short view or a short game. This is a long game. And you have to have the resources, both human capital, financial, frankly, the city and the community have to have the fortitude to withstand some of the downturns. And, I think one of the best examples of that is how we came together with the city to resolve the issues that presented themselves at Assembly Square in 2008 and 2009. I think you can look around this region and there isn't a project coming out of the ground, or much less opening, as it will be here in the next, over the next several weeks, anywhere of the size and scale of Assembly. And that's because we had the fortitude and the city had the fortitude to come together and resolve that in the worst of times.
So really quick question here before we close up. What's your favorite piece of Union Square culture and why?
I like the grittiness of Union Square, combined with kind of the innovation aspects of Union Square. I've done a few field trips to Fringe, gotten to know Mike over there. We've sat down with the folks over at Greentown Labs that are just coming in, and I've toured Artisan Asylum. I love that aspect, that there is this kind of entrepreneurial, innovative culture that not only just works here in Union Square, but lives in Somerville. And I think if we can tap into that vibe and marry it up with the grittiness and the music and the art and the creativity, that just really is this underlying creativity in Union Square that I just think is fantastic.
I love the art and the vibrancy of Union Square, the two things that and I see it everywhere. I see it at Brooklyn Boulders. When you go in there, it's vibrant, it's energetic, it's exciting. I see it in the graffiti. I see it in random paintings that are around this area. And I think it's important that some of those components that feel like they've been here a long time and really define this area don't get lost in a brand new shiny project that comes in here. And I think there's ways to incorporate that into what we're looking to do here.
Yeah, I would say not only not get lost, but be part of the ethos of what it is that we create, so that what we create is part of it.
Okay. I would like to thank our guests representing the National Development Federal Realty Investment Trust team for taking the time to speak with Greater Somerville tonight about their team visions for Union Square. As the Somerville Redevelopment Authority approaches their final decision for the master developer next month, I urge all of you to stay engaged with this process. With the magnitude of lands slated for redevelopment over the next 15 years, Somerville residents mustn't turn a blind eye to this process. We must educate ourselves on the 4 remaining candidates and express those opinions to City Hall to assure the right fit for the Somerville community is selected by the SRA. Best of luck to the National Development Federal Realty Investment Trust team in the weeks ahead. Until next time, thank you to the viewers at home for watching, and as always, stay safe and stay informed. Good night, everyone.